want to introduce this workshop?
No, over to Sally to do the introductions. Thank you, Worship.
Sally, straight to you.
Okay, thank you, Worship. I will share a presentation just to work through this morning. So bear with me while I get this started. Okay. So the purpose of this morning's workshop is to provide an update on the current COVID-19 situation for our district and also to seek your feedback and direction for a support local campaign. This graph highlights the numbers or the trends that we've had with COVID across the district. As of yesterday, there were 1,189 active cases within Waipa district with 162 new cases reported yesterday. In terms of support for those who are isolating within our community, Here to Help You was created by Wises Group, a Hamilton-based company, in response to people seeking COVID-19 support from our first lockdown 2 years ago. The premise was to connect people to local supports as efficiently and effectively as possible. Here to Help You has been live in Waipa for the past 3 weeks, and they look forward to connecting with Waipa residents to timely and appropriate supports. The preference is for people to fill out an online form at the website that's listed on this slide, or they can phone. The phone number available is 24/7, but it is unmanned and operates as a message service, and they do clear this a couple of times a day to be able to support those who cannot go through the online form. People are able to be connected to COVID-19 specific supports, including mental health, collection service, prepared meals, general support, food parcels, etc. So if you're aware of people within your areas in the community that do need some help, please do direct them to the Here to Help You team. While we are seeing restrictions from central government reducing, we're also still experiencing Omicron cases within the community requiring people to self-isolate. So this is affecting all parts of our community, including business operations, whether that's reduced hours or those that are having to close while people are isolating. So we're still living with the impacts of Omicron within our community. The next couple of slides are just some consumer spend impacts that have been highlighted previously, but just wanted to provide this context for you in terms of the support local campaign that we will be discussing further on in the presentation. So in terms of this slide, it is identifying that overall, yes, we've talked about consumer spending is up, but not all sectors have shared this rise. Into the most up-to-date information that we could gather for this presentation as of end of last week, our main street sort of pharmaceuticals and other store-based retailing, food and beverage services remain below the 2019 or the pre-pandemic levels. So this graph clearly highlights that our areas who are above those levels are home and recreation retailing and food and liquor. So the latest data available that's presented here when looking across the sector only identifies those positive areas within our business community, while the other areas are still behind those levels that we've seen pre-pandemic. So based on the Omicron still being present in our community and continuing to have an impact on our business community, the next slides to be presented by Hannah will provide an overview of how we can support this sector through a support local campaign. So I'd just like to hand over to Hannah now just to work through what the support local campaign, the why for it and what that would look like. So over to you, Hannah.
Sally, good morning all. So the Support Local campaign is to create a local focus for our community and for those businesses who've been going through some tough times, an opportunity to connect to our Waipa Home of Champions brand. Our champions do come in all shapes and forms, and there are some amazing, passionate people out there in the community. So this campaign would align with our vision, which is obviously the Waipa Home of Champions, building connected communities. So it is about connecting with those communities and also showing how socially resilient they have been in the last few years, as well as economically, for some, economically progressive, and how they've changed their business to adapt. So why now? Omicron is still present in our community. Our businesses are hurting. They've had it tough over the last few years. There is definitely decreased foot traffic in our main streets, and some have created some amazing adaptations of how to cope throughout those last few years as well. So it's our desire to demonstrate support district-wide for local businesses. It has been difficult for council to connect due to COVID protocols. So this is a way that we can support that connection and enable these stories to be told in different forms and in different ways across our platforms, with a real push on it being around our local champions. So it's a district-wide approach. We have had input from our business development manager for targeted business support. He has come through with some great ideas. A focus on the innovation and the uniqueness, or the new or different existing businesses and what they've had to do or change because of COVID-19. We want to touch base with the Chambers of Commerce to gain insight from their perspective and further ideas around profiles. And one thing that would be really important is making sure that across social media, where this will be predominantly used, that we get followers to tag their own local favourites in and tell their local stories as well, because that also enhances inclusivity for this as well. But I really also want to shine a focus on some of our local social service providers who have been working really tough and behind the scenes with COVID as well, and really creating amazing champions for our district. So the campaign will be created in-house at council using good local connections and content that can connect with our community. So this will be predominantly across social media, our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, on our Home of Champions pages and the council page, on the website for more in-depth content, looking to work with local media as well, because some of the stories really do deserve like larger features, and also just show that link to Waipa, Home of Champions, and the ethos behind this brand. The style is very much a storytelling style, focusing on the people and their struggles during COVID-19 and how our district as a whole can show their support. We want to back this up with great images and use really good authentic quotes to get those real perspectives. And we can look at grouping businesses as well. And then there will be some where it's more the story behind the business that would be in the spotlight. And again, having those ask on those posts for locals to mention their local favourites, and potentially that would grow more story ideas as we went along as well. So recently we did a couple of posts around support local Waipa, and those posts had really good analytics. So we feel it would be really popular within district-wide. And so what we're here for today is some direction and some feedback and your thoughts around this, which we welcome.
So with that, I'll stop sharing the screen and really look forward to hear any feedback that you have across what we've just presented this morning. So happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Hannah. Andrew's got his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Look, I just want to congratulate you guys on doing this. I know, as you probably all know, I'm involved in Homewood, the furniture store, and we've been one of the very fortunate businesses that has managed to, well, that people have supported, I guess, possibly largely because they're not travelling as much. But I know the main street has been very quiet in the last, since Omicron really has started, the red light thing, and that is, and anything to help support those people, I think is a really good idea. And yeah, the ideas for the campaign, I think it's great. I'll keep my thinking cap on and come back to you, but I just wanted to give that message. I think this is really worthwhile.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew. That's certainly, even though the restrictions are coming off, people are still nervous about moving around, aren't they? Philip, then Bruce, and then Roger.
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks, Hannah and Sally. Yeah, so this is obviously a great initiative, and I assume that the chambers will be right behind it as well. When were you looking at starting this campaign? Was it going to be a one-off day, or was it going to be a period of time over a few weeks or anything like that? But it's worked well in the past, shopping locally and that promotion. Yeah, as everyone's saying, that the retailers are really struggling out there, and if they're struggling in our towns, then I hate to think what they're doing in other towns. They must be really struggling. So car parking's not a premium like it has been in the past, but obviously we'll want people in town, and we're probably, like a lot of us, we're probably similar to the public in the sense that we only go to town for what we when we only really need to go to town to do our shopping and things like that. So support this, and so yeah, was it going to be just a one-off, a one day, or was it going to be over a few weeks, or what have you? And when were you looking at starting this? So thank you.
Through the chair, if I can just respond to that, we'll be looking at just going over at least, I would say, a month with ongoing posts coming through social media, and then if we can gain more content, we can continue that for a while.
Thanks, Hannah. Bruce.
Thanks, Your Worship. Hannah, I don't know whether you're aware of it, but I was out, it's not local, but I was looking into a shop window and had a placard there, and it says, okay, COVID's been bad for us, but don't feel sorry for us. And I kept reading this, is quite intriguing, because they're now putting all their efforts into online sales, because it's been so successful, they're closing their retail outlets. Have we had any examples of that with us locally?
So if I can, through the Mayor, I know that people have had to adapt most recently in the last 2 years in terms of how their businesses are operated and how they're doing a mixture of both online and in person. I know that some businesses through status, the red status, have purely been contactless pickups, so I've really had to adapt. In terms of just going online, I don't have that information in front of me, but I'm sure that there are most probably some businesses that have done that, as well as also adapting completely to their offer of what they can do. And I think that is one of the stories that we do have, where they have changed their business to adapt to the more local community needs versus what they were doing before. So those are the types of stories that we'd like to share, and those innovations that are coming through, which really tie to our Home of Champions brand.
Sally. Roger.
Yeah, thanks, Major. The question that I have is to do with the Chamber of Commerce. I know that the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce have had a campaign of buy local out there for a while. A couple of weeks ago, we heard that perhaps council's connections with local groups wasn't perhaps as good as it could be. And as this is probably more the domain of the Chamber of Commerce, I wonder if we should be working closely with them and maybe co-brand such a presentation as this, so we're not seen to kind of jump in their place rather than working with them. So just make that as a suggestion, that perhaps a co-branding exercise could be good.
I appreciate that feedback. Thank you, Councillor Gordon.
Thanks, Roger. Lou.
Good afternoon, through you, Mayor. I'm very supportive of both of this. I think it's a great option. Having worked a little bit and dealing with the hospitality industry, I know we've suffered very, very much in the last few years. Buying local is great. I'm just wondering whether we use something to promote within the print media. We all concentrate on electronic media, but the print media actually does do a good job. We might need to do this to encourage people. We're dealing with a lot of people out there that are facing declining and fixed incomes. We're seeing the event of supply difficulties. We're seeing a heavy round of inflation. And all of these are impacting along with your Omicron. So all of this is having its on-turn and growing effects throughout our economy. So I think that what we need to do is to actually stimulate a discussion amongst one, as you say, the Chamber of Commerce, the hospitality industry, the clubs and everybody, and perhaps put something into the print media, like a paper or something, a local paper, and try and encourage people to participate locally. I think that we've got to actually get out there and say to people, now is the time to get out and actually support your local industry, or otherwise they won't be there to support you in the future.
Yes, through the Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lou Brown. One of the tactics is to work with our local media partners as well in terms of sharing those longer stories and some more in depth in terms of what's happening within our community.
Thanks, Lou. Marcus.
Yeah, I agree with working closely with our Chamber of Commerce as well to do a joint campaign thing. But I also don't think it's just Omicron. I think it's also there's like a bit of an economic crunch coming, and people are tightening their belts and not spending as freely as they like because costs are definitely increasing. With selling computers and stuff, I can't get stock of computers, and like there's 3-4 month lead times now, and the prices are going up. And even just fueling your car and basic supplies have gone up absolutely dramatically. And I think that we've got to look at that. That's what's stopping the spending.
Thanks, Marcus. If there's anyone, if you've got bright ideas how you can control inflation, I think central government would be pleased to hear from you. Yeah, Liz.
Thanks, Jim. Hey, look, I've got a slightly different stance on this. I guess I feel I've seen this before where council takes a bit of a lead role in trying to decide what is best for communities and how best we should promote them or do. I'd really like to see just a small working group set up where we have, the chamber, obviously chambers are attending, but business owners and a bit of a variety, and let's hear from them as a group what they would like. But clearly we've got some money here that we want to spend, and I just don't want to see this go wrong. Not that I think it will, Hannah, sure, but I just feel like this is a time to listen to the community about what their what they think is the best way forward. The biggest thing for me is making sure that people stay Waipa. It's so easy to forget when we've got such a big city on our doorstep that we need to support local. Good example this morning, just opening the Super Value. Now, I've got to remind those residents they've got to support that particular business in that area if they want it to do well. And it's something that sometimes we just forget. And so I really like to, I think it's a great initiative, but I really want to get this right. And like I said, I'm suggesting that maybe we have a little working group, just one meeting collectively, so we can just nut out and come up with some good ideas. Just make sure we, have really connected with that, with the business community about what they would like to see. Thanks, Liz.
Comments on that, Sally and Hannah? How do we move forward with that?
Appreciate Councillor Stowick's concept there, and what we've mentioned within the slides is working with those Chamber of Commerce, and I think what we would appreciate doing is going out to that wider business community. Is you're right, we need to touch base with everybody across the sector and not just individuals. So I'm very happy to set up one of those meetings, and maybe Councillor Liz, if you're okay, if I connect with you on the membership and we get one meeting set up and then try and get the campaign going. How's that sound?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think when you connect individually, you can't really, the ideas don't start flowing, and it's when you've got 5 or 6 in a room, that's when you get really good feedback and value. So, yep, absolutely happy to be part of that. Thanks, Sally.
So in terms of the campaign itself, we're doing this all in-house. So it wasn't anticipated to, in terms of budget-wise, it was going to be utilising existing resources. But I think, the clarity and the earlier slides is that we do need to support our local businesses. So in order to seek what they would like from us, we're happy to do that to start with.
Thanks, Sally. Susan.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I was just going to agree with what Liz had suggested. I think sometimes we run the risk of, again, doing stuff at our communities. And I think in this instance, those business owners, those retailers, those hospitality outlets, they all know their business and they know what their needs are, probably better than what we do. So if we can play a supporting role in enabling them to form the attack, for want of a better word, then I think that's a really good way forward. So yeah, I just wanted to lend my support to Liz's suggestion, which you've obviously taken on board, so that's cool. And my apologies, I missed the actual presentation. I was taking an urgent phone call.
Thanks, Susan.
Yeah. And I think empowering, using our strength and tools to empower those business communities to get together and give them the strength to lead it.
Yeah. Thanks, Marcus. Sue, I see that you've joined us. Did you want to make any comment at all?
Not at this point. I missed the earlier part, but I'm certainly listening now and finding it quite interesting. I think, yes, we do need to consider the local economy and get it back up to where it needs to be. On the thing about buy local, I can safely say that me and quite a few of my friends have not been near Hamilton for months. We're buying everything where we are.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'd like to just add something to your meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry, just quickly, I think that when we do this, we want to actually look outside the sphere a little bit. I totally agree with what you're saying, Liz, but have a look at your largest your sports organisations, clubs, etc., because they are an integral part of that whole environment, economic environment. And as I say, you get some of the larger organisations involved in that, and they can come up with different ideas as well. And even, just coordinate with that. Perhaps even have a look and be a little bit parochial and have two groups, one in Cambridge and one in Skarmotu, which I'm not suggesting that we don't interchange, but I just think that they're more likely to do things. Okay.
Yep. And through you, Mayor Jim, that's definitely one of the aspects in terms of that local stories that we do want to share. Is we've got some great non-for-profit organisations such as sport clubs and community groups who are really supporting their communities during this time. So while we have talked about support local from an economic business side, we also want to be able to include those groups as well to raise their profile of how important they are for our community as well. So I'd just like to say I really appreciate your feedback and thoughts. Our next step will be to have a meeting with those within the community to really understand their perspectives so we can get this campaign right. And then from there, we'll start sharing those stories. So I'll give you a heads up in terms of when we're about to roll those out as well. So yeah, if there's nothing else, I'm happy. Really appreciate your feedback. So thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Thanks, Hannah. I see a few thumbs going up. So look, I think you can take it from the discussion that it's overall support. So let's get the program up and running. And as has been suggested, there might be some additional suggestions that come from the community that we can build into it as well. So, hey, thanks for the workshop. So we'll